Okay, send me the link.
Yeah, I will do. Okay, Bismillah, we're live.
الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام الأتمان الأكملان على محمد رسول الله سيد الأولين والآخرين وإمام الأنبياء والمرسلين والشافع المشفع يوم الدين وعلى آله الطيبين وأزواجه الطاهرات أمهات المؤمنين وصحابته الغر الميامين ومن استنى بسنته واهتدى بهديه إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، حياكم الله أيها الإخوة والأخوات إلى هذا اللقاء المتجدد من لقاءات ساعة للتقوي في الطاعة. وحديثنا في هذه العشية في هذه الليلة عن أمر عظيم، ألا وهو أمر بناء المجتمع وأمر تحصين الفروج، إنه الزواج. نعم.
Indeed, all praises are due to Allah, and may the most complete and full salutations be showered upon Muhammad, the messenger of Allah, the leader of the first and the last, the Imam of the prophets and messengers, the intercessor whose intercession will be accepted on the day of recompense, and upon his good family and distinguished companions, and those who take his example as an example to be followed, and seek his guidance as guidance to be followed until the day of recompense. To proceed, I welcome you, my brothers and sisters, to this recurring lesson that we call the Hour of Power, an opportunity to strengthen our faith. And the topic of our discussion this evening is something of great importance, because through it is the rectification of, or the foundations of the society, and through it is the purification or the maintaining of the purification and the chasteness of the private parts. And this is nothing other than the topic of marriage.
وعند الحديث عن الزواج ينبغي التعريج على معنى ذلك في اللغة وفي الشرع أو في الاصطلاح الشرعي. أما في اللغة فالزواج هو اقتران أحد الشيئين بالآخر وازدواجهما بحيث يكونان شيئا واحدا، أو يصير كل منهما زوجا للآخر بعد أن كان كل واحد منهما فردا، ولهذا يقال زوج مقابل فرد. نعم.
And before we discuss marriage, we should really have a look and see what marriage means in terms of its linguistic meaning within the Arabic language, and also the technical meaning that it has in the Islamic legislation. So if we look firstly at its meaning in the Arabic language, and the term is zawaj. You could probably spell that Z-A-W-A-A-J. And this term, it means linguistically to join one of two things together, or to join two things together. And when you join them together, they become one thing, or they become a whole. So the zawj, or the companion, it completes the other, and they become one. And in this sense, this terminology in Arabic, zawj, Z-A-W-A-J, it's used, and its opposite is the thing that is single. or the thing that is unjoined.
ومنه أيضا في اللغة الضم، التزاوج بمعنى الضم، كأن الزوج ضم الزوجة إلى صدره ضما يشبه ضم أم الغلام لغلامها إلى صدرها في حنان وشوق ورأفة. ويطلق على العقد والوطء كما جاء في كتاب تهذيب اللغة للأزهري. نعم.
And it also comes with the meaning of to embrace or to bring something close to something else, just as the wife will bring the husband close to her or close to her chest, just as the mother does with the child. And it also means linguistically, another one of the linguistic meanings is in reference to the contract, i.e. the marriage contract or the actual act of consummating the marriage. And this is, as was mentioned in the book, Tahdhib al-Lughat, which you could probably spell Tahtheeballughat, and that was by Shaykhna Imam al-Azhari.
الأزهري، نعم.
By Imam al-Azhari, which you could spell Alazahari.
وأما في الاصطلاح الشرعي فقد عرفه الفقهاء كما جاء عن الإمام المقدسي في كتابه المغني، قال: المعنى الشرعي لكل من الزواج والنكاح هو ما يطلق على العقد الذي يعطي لكل واحد من الزوجين حق الاستمتاع بالآخر على الوجه المشروع. نعم.
And it was defined in terms of its reference in the Islamic legislation and Islamically by the scholar, the Imam al-Maqdisi, which you could spell Almaqdisi, in his book Al-Mughni, Almughni. So he mentioned in this book the definition of marriage in the Islamic sense, and he said that it is the in reference. So he gave it as reference to the term of marrying and marriage, and he said that it refers to the contract through which the individuals or both parties, they have the right to fulfill their desires with one another in a way in which is legislated and lawful.
وعرفه الشيخ العلامة ابن عثيمين رحمه الله في رسالته الزواج بأنه تعاقد بين رجل وامرأة يقصد به استمتاع كل منهما بالآخر وتكوين أقف شيئا فشيئا
من فضلكم شيخنا حفظكم الله. And it was also given the definition by the scholar Ibn Uthaymeen, IBN UTHAYMEEN, who said in his book entitled Marriage, that its definition is that it is the writing of a contract between a man and a woman whereby they intend to lawfully fulfill their desires with one another.
وتكوين أسرة صالحة ومجتمع مسلم سليم.
And as a result, to build a righteous family and to form the fundamentals of a sound Islamic or Muslim community.
ثم قال ومن هنا نأخذ أنه لا يقصد بعقد النكاح مجرد الاستمتاع، بل يقصد به مع ذلك معنى آخر، وهو تكوين الأسرة الصالحة والمجتمعات السليمة.
And from this definition, he states, this scholar, Ibn Uthaymeen, he states again, from here, we see and we realize that the intent behind marriage is not solely the fulfillment of one's desires. Rather, it is something that is done with the intent of building a righteous family and forming a sound community.
ثم قال رحمه الله تعالى لكن قد يغلب أحد القصدين على الآخر لاعتبارات معينة بحسب أحوال الشخص، أي قد يغلب قصد الرجل بالزواج الاستمتاع دون تكوين الأسرة، أو قد يحصل ذلك من المرأة أن تريد بالزواج الاستمتاع دون تكوين الأسرة، أو قد يكون المقصد تكوين الأسرة دون الاستمتاع. كل ذلك وارد ولا حرج فيه.
And then he goes on to explain that it could be the case that one of these intentions is prevalent or more dominant than the other. And this is no issue. So it could be, for example, that the groom, he is more inclined, or his intention is more geared towards the lawful fulfillment of his desires, rather than the setting up or the establishment of a righteous family. Or it could be the case for the bride, that she wants to protect herself from falling into that which is unlawful. So this intention is maybe dominant for her. Or it could be the other way around. It could be that the intention of having a family and raising the righteous family and impacting positively upon the community, this is the prevalent or the dominant intention, i.e. it's dominant over the fulfilling of one's desires. And all of this is acceptable, and there is no harm in either or any of these scenarios.
وللزواج في القرآن مفهوم ومقاصد، ومن مفهوم أو ومفهوم القرآن للزواج أنه يكون سكنا وطمأنينة، كما قال الله عز وجل في سورة البقرة في الآية 35: وقلنا يا آدم اسكن أنت وزوجك الجنة. فبين سبحانه وتعالى العلاقة التي بين آدم وحواء وهي الزوجية. نعم.
And marriage in the Qur'an, it has its understanding, or there is an understanding behind what marriage is and what constitutes marriage. And there is also the intent and the reasons behind and the wisdoms behind getting married. And all of this is reported and stated in the Qur'an. And one of these examples of the understanding of what marriage is and the makeup of marriage is that it is an opportunity for the two partners to dwell with one another and to have tranquility in dwelling with one another. And this is, as Allah mentions in the second chapter of the Qur'an, the chapter of the cow, verse number 35, where Allah says that which means, and we said, O Adam, dwell, you and your wife, in paradise, and eat therefrom in ease, and the rest of the verse. So here Allah the Most High mentions that they should dwell with one another. So this dwelling and this living, this cohabitation is one of the understandings of marriage that is reported in the Qur'an.
ومن مفاهيم هذه العلاقة في القرآن علاقة الزوجية حصول السكينة بين الزوجين.
And also another one of these intents and understandings of marriage is the descendants or the achievement of tranquility and harmony between the two partners.
وأن الزواج هو أداة حصول المودة والرحمة بين الرجل والمرأة.
And that marriage is a means of a man and a woman showing their love, their affection, their compassion and their mercy for one another.
وربما تأتي المودة والرحمة بفعل السكينة، أو ربما تأتي السكينة من المودة والرحمة.
And it may be that this love, it grows out of the tranquility and the peace that they have with one another, or it could be the opposite, that the peace and tranquility comes as a result of the love that they have for one another.
والمودة هي إحساس لطيف باعثه الحب، والرحمة تكون في الإشفاق من الزوج على الزوجة، وتكون من سعي الزوجة لراحة الزوج بعد عناء يوم طويل في سبيل كسب الرزق.
And the love, it's a bit difficult to translate this because this special type of love that I suppose this love that the married party have for one another, it comes as it's a more specific type of love that they have, and it stems from a more general type of love. And the mercy that they have is also derived from how they support one another. So, for example, when one of them goes and they seek, or the husband goes to seek wealth to sustain the family, and the mercy that the wife will have when he does so, when he brings home the income, etc.
وللزواج مقاصد حث عليها القرآن الكريم، من ذلكم تكاثر الجنس البشري. قال تعالى كما في الآية الأولى من سورة النساء: يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة أي آدم، وخلق منها زوجها أي حواء، وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء. ولننظر الآن إلى قوله خلقكم من نفس واحدة، وخلق منها من تلكم النفس زوجها، أي الذي يشكل معها المخلوق الذي يشكل مع الأولى زوجا، لأن الأولى كانت فردا وهي آدم، ثم خلق الله ولم يقل وبث منها زوجها، لأن آدم ذكر والذكر لا يحبل، ولهذا أخرجها الله من ضلعه الأعلى كما جاء في الحديث، وستظل على اعوجاج ذلك الضلع، ولا يكون الاستمتاع بها إلا مع اعوجاج فيها. ولهذا ينبغي للرجل أن يستحضر هذا المعنى وهو يتعامل مع المرأة. نعم.
And marriage, it also has intents and wisdoms behind it. And these are intents and wisdoms and purposes that the Qur'an encourages us towards and the Qur'an highlights. And from or one of these intentions or one of these reasons for marriage is so that people, well, there can be more and more people for procreation. So Allah the Most High, He mentions in the first verse of the 4th chapter of the Qur'an, the chapter entitled The Women, where He says that which means, O mankind, fear your Lord, who created you from one soul, i.e. He created you from Adam, and created from it its mate, and then dispersed from both of them many men and women. So here it shows that from Adam and from Eve, Allah the Most High, He dispersed many men and women. And this is the intent, or one of the intents behind marriage. And when Allah the Most High mentions in this verse, He says that fear your Lord who created you from one soul, i.e. He created Adam and created from it, i.e. He created from Adam its mate, meaning Eve. And here we must note, if you look at the verse, that Allah mentions that He created Eve from Adam. So he created Eve from Adam, and He didn't say that He dispersed Eve from Adam, because this is the right and this is what's correct for your partners. It's not correct, or it would not be upright for Allah to have dispersed from Adam himself his own mate. So instead, what Allah the Most High did, as has been mentioned in the narration of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, that He created Eve, his mate, from Adam's upper rib, and the upper rib, and the upper bent rib. So this is something that the people and the males, they should pay attention to when they deal and they have their interactions with their wives, that the wife, or the original wife, was made from the crooked rib, the uppermost crooked rib of Adam.
وقد جمع الله عز وجل بين المفهوم والمقاصد في آية واحدة، مفهوم الزواج ومقصده في آية واحدة، وهي الآية 189 من سورة الأعراف، حيث قال جل وعلا: هو الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وجعل منها زوجها. إذن هذا هو المقصد، وجعل منها زوجها ليسكن إليها، وهذا هو المفهوم، ليسكن إليها. فلما تغشاها، وهذا أيضا مفهوم، فلما تغشاها استمتع بها، وهذا مفهوم من مفاهيم الزواج. حملت حملا خفيفا فمرت به، وهذا مقصد من مقاصد الزواج، هي أن تحمل المرأة وتلد، فيكثر الجنس البشري ويستمر في عمارة الأرض وعبادة الرب عز وجل.
شكرا، بارك الله فيكم. الآية
189.
189. حفظكم
نعم.
الله. And Allah the Most High, He mentions and He combines the understanding of the concept of marriage. He combines it with a number of the intentions or the resulting intentions of getting married. And by the will of Allah, this will become clearer as we see the example that our Shaykh gave. And the example of this is in the 7th chapter of the Qur'an, the chapter of the heights, and it's verse number 189, where Allah the Most High said, "It is He, i.e. Allah, who created you from one soul, meaning Adam, and created from it its mate, that He might dwell in security with her." So this is the understanding of the concept of marriage, i.e. to have dwelling with one another in security. And when the man covers her, she carries a light burden, i.e., she becomes pregnant. So when it says, when the man covers her, it's I suppose a euphemism or an eloquence, a linguistic eloquence to say that they have relations with one another. So when they have relations, she carries a light burden, i.e., she becomes pregnant, and this is one of the intents of marriage, i.e., to have children. And when it becomes heavy, they both invoke their Lord, saying, if you should give us a good child, we should surely be among the grateful. And again, this is one of the intents behind getting married, i.e., to have great, good, righteous offspring.
وللزواج في الإسلام أحكام كما له شروط. نتكلم عن كل منهما. أولا الأحكام، أحكام أو حكم الزواج في الإسلام. نعم.
And I failed in the last part, I failed to mention one of the understandings of what marriage constitutes, and that's where Allah, the Most High, He makes reference to Adam and Eve, and He says that where Adam and Eve, they have their relations, their legal, lawful relations with one another, this is another one of the understandings of what the makeup of marriage means. So there are 4 examples that we've covered in this verse. The Shaykh, may Allah preserve him, went on to say that when we talk and discuss about marriage, we should understand that marriage has its conditions and it has its rulings. And now we will discuss some of the rulings pertaining to marriage.
أما حكمه فهو يختلف باختلاف الناس، باختلاف الأشخاص. فقد يكون واجبا في حق أحدهم، وقد يكون مندوبا أو مستحبا أو مكروها أو محرما على أحد من الناس كما سنبين.
As for the ruling of marriage, i.e., whether it's permissible or recommended, etc., then this fluctuates and it differs in reflection to the individual. So it may be the case that marriage is obligatory upon one of the 2 partners, whereas for the other, it might just be something that's recommended. Or in and of itself, it may be that marriage is neither obligatory nor is it recommended. It could be that it is simply permissible, or it could be that it is disliked, or even it could be the case that marriage is impermissible.
فأما من وجد الاستطاعة المالية والسلامة البدنية، يعني بمعنى أنه يقدر على الجماع ويقدر على الإنفاق ويخشى على نفسه العنة وعلى دينه الضرر من جراء العزوبة، فإن هذا الزواج في حقه واجب. إذا كان يخشى على نفسه العنت بمعنى الوقوع في الحرام، ويخشى على دينه الضرر لأنه يحتاج إلى الزواج، فيظل فكره مشغولا به في صلاته، في عباداته. وقد جاء في ذلك حديث متفق على صحته. نعم.
So as for the individual, if they are financially capable and they're capable in terms of their bodily functions, i.e., are able to consummate the marriage, and they have a desire to do so, to the point or to the extent whereby they would fear that it would affect their religion in a negative way, or that they would fall into that which is impermissible, then for this individual, it's obligatory for them to get married. And this might be the fact that the individual, they're constantly thinking about it and they have this desire, such that it affects them when they're praying and when they're doing other things. Because if the individual fulfills these requirements and these conditions that we've mentioned, then becoming or getting married becomes an obligation upon them. And this ruling is, as has been mentioned, in a narration of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and it's a narration that has been agreed upon, i.e. it's a narration that has been reported by the two Imams, Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim.
فعن عبد الله بن مسعود رضي الله تعالى عنه قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم: يا معشر الشباب من استطاع منكم الباءة فليتزوج، ومن لم يستطع فعليه بالصوم فإنه له وجاء. فقوله يا معشر الشباب وجه الخطاب للشباب، وهو موجه لكل إنسان شابا أو كان كهلا، لأن الزواج قد يحتاجه الشاب وقد يحتاجه الكهل، وقد يكون، وفي الغالب يكون الشاب أكثر حاجة من الكهل والشيخ، وقد يكون الشيخ فيه نوع شفق على الجماع فيكون أكثر حاجة من الشاب. ولكن خرج هذا النداء للشباب مخرج الغالب، لهذا قال يا معشر الشباب، لأن الشباب فيهم طاقة ويخشى عليهم من الوقوع في الفتنة. ثم بين شرط الزواج وهو القدرة المالية، لأنه في الأول ذكر الطاقة الجنسية أو الجسمية، ثم بين القدرة المالية فقال من استطاع منكم الباءة، أي الإنفاق، لأنه لا يصلح أن يتزوج وهو لا قدرة له على الإنفاق فيجيع زوجته ويحرمها، فإن هذا ليس من مقاصد الزواج. نعم.
And this is the narration that has been reported by the companion of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. May Allah be pleased with him, that the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, O youth, whosoever amongst you has the financial capability, then let them marry. For indeed, it is a shield for them. فإنه يكون له وجاء. And yes, so O youth, whosoever amongst you is able to financially, then let them get married. For indeed, it is better for their sight, i.e. that they'll lower their gaze, and it is more chaste for their private parts. So here the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, he addressed the youth. And this is because, in a general sense, the youth are more affected and they have stronger desires than those who are older. However, it may be the case that, or this doesn't mean that it only explicitly refers to the youth. This could be applicable equally to those who are older, because it may be that they have equally strong desires as the youth do. So here the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, he addressed the youth because the youth is, or the youth is the stage at which these desires are more prevalent. And at this stage in their lives, trials and tribulations in this sense are feared for them, and they have generally the strength or the bodily desires to get married. So here the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, he was addressing them, and that gave a kind of tacit reference to the condition of having the desire to get married. And then he mentioned, peace and blessings be upon him, O youth, whosoever amongst you has the financial capability, i.e. they can financially support a wife and a family, then they should get married. So they should be able to financially afford to do so that they can spend upon the family and they can support them properly.
نعم. ثم مما يدل على شرط القدرة المالية أو الاستطاعة المالية ما جاء في حديث فاطمة بنت قيس رضي الله عنها، مخرج عند ابن ماجه في السنن بسند صححه الألباني رحمهم الله، أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال لها: إذا حللت فآذنيني، أي إذا حللت من العدة فآذنيني، أي أخبريني. فآذنته، فخطبها معاوية بن أبي سفيان وأبو الجهم بن صخير وأسامة بن زيد تقدم لخطبتها ثلاثة. فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم مشيرا إليها أو عليها: أما معاوية فرجل ترب لا مال له. ترب بمعنى فقير لا يملك إلا التراب، فرجل ترب، وفي رواية صعلوك لا مال له، والصعلوك هو الفقير. وأما أبو جهم فرجل ضراب للنساء، يعني يغضب سريعا ويضرب. ثم قال: ولكن أسامة، يعني تزوجي أسامة بن زيد. فقالت بيدها هكذا: أسامة، يعني مؤكدة. فقال لها رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم: طاعة الله وطاعة رسوله خير لك، أو قالت بيدها هكذا يعني مستغربة أن تتزوج أسامة وتترك ذينك الرجلين أو غيرهما من كبار وأشراف الناس. فقال لها النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم: طاعة الله وطاعة رسوله خير لك. قالت: فتزوجته فاغتبطت به، أي سررت سرورا عظيما به على غير ما كانت تتوقع.
And we also see an example of the condition of being able to financially support the wife and the family. We see this narrated in a narration that's been reported by Ibn Majah, and that's IBN MAJAH, and authenticated by Al-Albani, ALBANI. And it's the hadith or the narration of Fatima bint Qais, whose name FATIMA BINTQAYS. May Allah be pleased with her, who the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, he said to her, when you are able to get married, then let me know, so I can guide you to getting married. And then when she was able to get married, there were three potential suitors. The first was Muawiyah, the second was Abu Jahm, and the third was Usama. I didn't spell any of those names, Tom, I'm sorry. You got them though. So once she was ready to get married, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, he said, as for Muawiyah, indeed he is a poor man and he doesn't have anything except dirt, meaning he doesn't own anything and he will not be able to support you. وشيخنا الشاهد هذا أليس كذلك أن معاوية
نعم. نعم هذا هو محل الشاهد.
And this is the reason why the Shaykh mentioned this hadith. This is the point of his mentioning of this narration. The fact that the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, he did not encourage her to marry him due to the fact that he was poor and he was destitute. And then the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, as for Abu Jahm, Abujaham, he is an individual who gets angry very quickly and then he beats his women. So the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, he didn't encourage her to marry him either. And then he said, as for Usama, Usamah, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, marry him. And Fatima, she kind of, I don't know if you saw the action that the Sheikh was doing, Tom, with his hand, but she sort of actioned with her hand, and she was puzzled, like why? Why would you advise me to marry Usama, and you would encourage me not to marry those who are better in status or more wealthy than he? And then the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, obedience to Allah and his messenger is better for you, less that you know, or yeah, it was better for you. And then she went on and she married Usama, and she said afterwards, I never realized, or I never thought that I would be as happy, or I met with happiness that I'd never expected once I married him.
ومن لم يستطع النفقة فقد أرشده النبي وعنده القدرة، يعني ليس عنده القدرة المالية لكن عنده القدرة الجسدية وعنده الرغبة الجنسية، فإن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أرشده إلى عمل يحدث له ضبطا لهذه الرغبة الجنسية حتى لا تنفلت وتصير إلى محرم. لهذا قال ومن لم يستطع فعليه بالصوم فإنه له وجاء، أي كلجام الفرس إذا شددته توقفت. نعم.
And as for the individual who does not have the financial means to support a family or get married, then the Prophet, peace, but they do have the desire or the bodily ability to get married, then the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, he directed them and encouraged them towards an action that would prevent them from falling into that which was haram or that which is impermissible. So where he said, peace and blessings be upon him, and whosoever is not able to or is unable to, then they should take up and they should fast. For indeed, it is a type of protection for them. It is a shield for them. And this is a type of shield that it kind of protects the individual as it would protect, maybe it's a specific type of shield that would protect horses. It would protect them from falling into that which is impermissible.
وهذا كان بيان الواجب من الزواج، وقد يكون مستحبا لمن؟ للقادر عليه نفقة ولا يخاف العنت، يعني الوقوع في الحرام، ولا الضرر في الدين، وهو آمن من أن يقع في المحظور، فهذا يستحب له أن يتزوج، لأن هذه سنة الحياة، والناس في الدنيا يتزوج الرجال النساء، وهكذا في الجنة كما قال الله عز وجل وزوجناه بحور عين. فمثل هذا الإنسان القادر على النفقة ولكنه غير محتاج له جنسيا، يعني لا يشتهي، ليس منساقا، يعني فمثل هذا يستحب له ولا يجب عليه.
So what has proceeded and what we have explained up to this point are the conditions or the circumstances in which marriage is an obligation upon the individual. And we said that marriage, it may be something that is not an obligation, but is recommended. And this is when the individual, they have the ability, the financial ability to get married, and they also have the desire, meaning the urge and the sexual urge to uptake their desires in a lawful way. However, unlike the first individual, they are not afraid, or there is no danger of them falling into that which is unlawful. And there is nothing that will damage their religion, i.e. they are safe in a sense that the first individual was not. And this is as Allah the Most High mentions in the Qur'an, referring to the people of the paradise, and indeed we married them to fair maidens. So this is a marriage that isn't a marriage that's based on desires. So this is the difference, and this is when the individual, it's recommended for them and not obligatory for them to get married.
وقد يكون النكاح محرما في حق إنسان، وذلك أن يكون غير قادر على الجماع، ثم لا يخبر المرأة أو أهل المرأة بذلك، فإن هذا يحرم عليه لأنه يوقعها في الفتنة والمحظور. فإن أخبرهم أو أخبر المرأة ووافقت، فقال بعض أهل العلم يكره ولا يحرم. ووجه الكراهة هو أن هذه المرأة وإن كانت تعلم بعلة هذا الرجل في عدم القدرة على الجماع، إلا أنها قد تصير إلى الحرام. وقال بعض أهل العلم تقع الكراهة إذا علم أحد الطرفين من الآخر عدم القدرة على الإنجاب، لأن هذا فيه تفويت لمقصد من مقاصد الزواج الشرعية، وإن كان لا يحرم لكنه يكره، فإن الإنسان يبحث عن التي تنجب له، كما قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم: تزوجوا الودود الولود. الودود من المودة، من الحب، والولودة أي كثيرة الولادة. ثم قال: فإني مكاثر بكم الأمم يوم القيامة. وهذا يعرف من بنات أسرتها كأخواتها وخالاتها وعماتها، إن كن ولادات لهن أولاد ففي الغالب أن تكون هي مثلهن. نعم، والله أعلم.
Also, the marriage, it could be impermissible. How is that? That could be, for example, where the individual, they are not able to fulfill their desires, i.e. they're not able to consummate the marriage for one reason or the other. And then they go ahead with the marriage, and for example, the male or the bride, the groom, he doesn't tell the bride that this is the case, or he doesn't inform her family that this is the case, and then he gets married to her, and this is the case. And this is impermissible because it will cause trials and tribulations and problems for her. And the scholars have said that if she is told about it, and even if she agrees, even then it is disliked for the marriage to take place. And this is because even though the bride enters into the contract and she's aware, she could still fall into that which is impermissible due to her own desires. So what we see here is we see that this, i.e. the lack of fulfillment or the lack of ability to fulfill or to consummate the marriage, it negates one of the intents behind getting married, and that is the fulfillment of one's desires. And this is also indicated in the narration of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, where he ordered the Muslims, he said, marry the women, the loving women who are very fertile, or they bear lots of children. So this is so that my ummah, my nation, will be the most, or there will be numerous on the day of resurrection. So it shows that this is one of the intents behind getting married, i.e. to have children. And how can an individual know whether a woman is extremely fertile? Then what they do, they look at her mother and her aunties. And if she comes from a family where the women are fertile and give lots of children, then the likelihood is that she will be the same.
ويكون الزواج ويكره ترك الزواج لغير عذر، لما ورد في الحديث عن أنس رضي الله عنه أنه قال: جاء 3 رهط إلى بيوت أزواج النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يسألون عن عبادة النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم، فلما أخبروا كأنهم تقالوها، أي رأوا أنها قليلة في حقهم، لأنه نبي وعمله أجره مضاعف، فهم كأنهم قالوا هذا بالنسبة لنا عمل قليل. فقالوا: وأين نحن من النبي، يعني صلى الله عليه وسلم، ما منزلتنا منه؟ قد غفر الله له ما تقدم من ذنبه وما تأخر. قال أحدهم: أما أنا فأصلي الليل أبدا. وقال الآخر: وأنا أصوم ولا أفطر. وقال الآخر: أنا أعتزل النساء، أي لا أتزوج، فلا أتزوج أبدا. فجاء رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال: أنتم الذين قلتم كذا وكذا؟ إي والله إني لأخشاكم لله وأتقاكم له، لكني أصوم وأفطر وأصلي وأرقد وأتزوج النساء، فمن رغب عن سنتي فليس مني. متفق عليه. ومعنى قولي ليس مني يعني ليس على هدي وطريقتي.
Leaving off marriage without a reason or without a valid excuse is something that is detested, or it's not liked. And this is one of the rulings of Islam. And the evidence of this is the narration on the authority of Anas, A-N-A-S, who said that a group or 3 individuals came to observe the practices, the religious practices of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. And when they looked upon them, they deemed them to be small, or they deemed the actions for themselves not to be sufficient, because they said, indeed, these are the actions of a prophet, and the prophet has had all of his sins forgiven, and he is the closest to Allah. So if this is the worship of the prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and we are not of his station and his rank, then rationale states that we must do more than he does, because his sins have been forgiven and he is so close to Allah. So one of these 3 individuals said, I will pray all night and I will not sleep. The second said, I will fast and I will never break my fast. I will fast every day. And the third said, I will never get married. And then the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, he heard about these people, and then he accosted them and went and said to them, are you those people who said such and such and such and such? Indeed, know that I pray and I sleep. I fast and I break my fast, and I marry women. And by Allah, I fear Allah more than all of you. And then he said, whosoever whosoever turns away from my example, then they are not from me, i.e. meaning that they are not upon the guidance that I have brought.
ثم نأتي في آخر اللقاء إلى الشروط، شروط الزواج. أولا يعني شروط الزواج في الإسلام، أولا تعيين كل من الزوج والزوجة، يعني يحدد بعينه باسمه، ويكون ذلك كما قلنا بتسميته وبوصفه وبالإشارة إليه. نعم، هذا الشرط الأول.
Now at the end of tonight's sitting, we'll look at the conditions of getting married. The first condition is that both partners should be specified. So it should be known who the bride is and who the groom is. And this can be an identification either by name or by their description or by a gesture that specifies them.
والشرط الثاني التراضي بين الزوجين، فلا بد من رضا كل طرف عن الطرف الآخر، ويدل على ذلك قوله صلى الله عليه وسلم: لا تنكح الأيم أي الثيب حتى تستأمر، ولا تنكح البكر حتى تستأذن. نعم.
وشيخنا المراد بالثيب يعني هي تعلن إذنها أو تقول تجهر.
أي نعم، الثيب هي تقول، لا بد أن تقول.
أثابكم الله. The second condition is that both the bride and the groom, they are pleased with getting married, or they are doing so and they are happy to do so. And this is indicated by the narration of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, where he said that indeed the woman who's already been married, she gives her consent by her explicit statement, whereas the one who hasn't been married before, then her silence and her lack of stating otherwise is her approval.
والشرط الثالث الإشهاد، فلا بد من الإشهاد على الزواج، لقوله صلى الله عليه وسلم في الحديث: لا نكاح إلا بولي وشاهدين.
The third condition is that there are witnesses who bear witness to the contract. And this is due to the statement of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, that there is no marriage, there is no correct marriage except with a male patron or a male guardian, and they're guiding it, and two witnesses.
والشرط الرابع وجود الولي، بأن يكون العاقد للمرأة وليها، لأن الله تعالى خاطب الأولياء في الزواج فقال: وأنكحوا الأيام منكم، وقال صلى الله عليه وسلم: أيما امرأة نكحت بغير إذن وليها فنكاحها باطل.
Allah. The fourth condition is that there is a male representative or a male guardian of the female who draws up the contract on her behalf and with her. And this is due to the statement of Allah, that which means, and marry the women from among you, i.e. Get the contract. I marry here is a verb meaning to write the contract. And Allah knows best. And also and also the hadith that we have mentioned previously.
ويشترط في هذا الولي أن يكون عاقلا، وأن يكون بالغا، وأن يكون حرا، وأن يكون متحدا في الدين مع من كان وليا عنها. فالمرأة النصرانية وليها يكون نصرانيا ولا يكون مسلما، والمرأة المسلمة وليها يكون مسلما ولا يكون نصرانيا. نعم.
And the conditions for this guardian are as follows. First, that they are of sound mind. Second, they are mature, they're matured of age. Third, that they are free, i.e. they are not a slave. And fourthly, that they are of the same faith as the woman who is getting married. So, for example, the Christian woman who is getting married, then her guardian must be a Christian. The Muslim woman who is getting married, her guardian must be a Muslim. So it's not correct in either of these cases that the guardian, male guardian, should be of a different faith to the woman.
فإن كانت مسلمة وليس لها ولي مسلم تولى أمرها الحاكم المسلم أو من يقوم مقام الحاكم المسلم كمن تقيمه الجماعة المسلمة في بلاد غير مسلمة مقام القاضي أو مقام كبيرها، فهذا هو يكون وليها.
And if she is Muslim, but she does not have a Muslim relative or a Muslim person who can act as her patron and her guardian in this respect, in writing up the marriage, then the Imam or the leader of the Muslims is or acts as her patron in this respect or this regard. And if it's the case that she is in a place where there is no Imam, then the person who fulfills this kind of role within that society.
هذا باختصار ما يتعلق بالزواج وشروطه. بقي أن نشير إلى خلو الموانع من صحة الزواج، ومن ذلك الحرمة بين الزوج والزوجة، كأن يكون أخا لها أو خالا لها أو عما لها، أو أن يكون بينهما رضاع، أو أن يكون بينهما اختلاف في الدين، فتكون هي مسلمة وهو غير مسلم، فعندئذ لا يصح النكاح.
And what we've taken the rulings and the conditions of getting married. What remains is for us to mention the preventative barriers to a marriage taking place. So the first of those is that it may be a relationship whereby the contract of marriage is not doable by merit of the relationship outside the marriage. So, for example, if the bride and the groom are brother and sister, or if he is her maternal or paternal uncle, or if there is a relationship through wet nursing, none of these are relationships that are deemed correct for marriage. Or indeed, if there is a difference of religion between the bride and the groom, whereby she is a Muslim but he is not.
فاتني أن أذكر شرطا من شروط صحة الزواج أيضا، وهو حصول الإيجاب والقبول. والإيجاب يكون من جهة المرأة، فيقول وليها يكون وليها هو الذي يقوم بالإيجاب، فيقول يتلفظ به، فيقول مثلا زوجتك موليتي فلانة بنت فلان. ويكون من جهة الزوج القبول، فيقول قبلت الزواج من موليتك فلانة بنت فلان على تحديد على المهر الذي اتفقنا عليه ويسميانه.
And there is another condition of getting married that we failed to mention, and that is the fifth condition, and that is the offering. It's a condition that the marriage must be offered and it must be accepted. So in terms of the offering is done on part of the patron or the guardian of the bride, whereby he will say, I offer you the hand of so-and-so, the daughter of so-and-so, and the acceptance is the other side of it, which is done by the groom, and he will say, yes, I accept the marriage of so-and-so, the daughter of so-and-so, with a mahr, with a so the mahr is the price that's given when they get married, or it's the sum of money that's given when they get married, and then he will name that sum of money.
وأيضا من شروط الزواج المهر، فلا بد أن يدفع الزوج للزوجة مهرا كما قال الله عز وجل أو آتيتم إحداهن قنطارا. وأخيرا الإعلان، إشهار الزواج بين الناس، لقول صلى الله عليه وسلم فصل ما بين نكاحنا ونكاح أهل الكتاب الضرب بالدف، يعني عند النساء، حتى يعلم الناس أن هذا الحفل هو لزواج فلانة أو فلان بفلانة، فلا يستغرب إذا رؤيا مع بعضهما. نعم.
And also this payment of money, this is another one of the conditions of getting married, and this is money that the groom pays the bride, a sum of money that's hers, as indicated in the Qur'an. And then finally, that the marriage is announced openly and that the people are made aware of the marriage. And this is due to the statement of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. The difference between our marriages and the marriages of the people of the book is the drums, i.e. is the fact that our marriages are announced and we make a big deal out of them so that people know about them, so that when they are together, the people do not start talking and they are not surprised that they are together, or they do not come to some wrong conclusion.
أسأل الله بمنه وكرمه أن يوفق الشباب جميعا ذكورا وإناثا للزواج وحصول الاستقرار في حياتهم الزوجية، وأن يبارك لهما ويرزقهما الذرية الصالحة. والله تعالى أعلم، وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه.
And I ask Allah the Most High to facilitate the good marriage or getting wed well for our young people, and to bless them with good and righteous children. And may Allah send and shower peace and salutations upon our Prophet Muhammad, upon his family and companions to the day of resurrection.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Jazakallah khair, Akil, and thank you very much, Tom. I think that inshallah we'll do a part 2, a finalization of this next week, inshallah, where we can have a question and answer period for the last 20 minutes of the hour, inshallah. So is that okay? We can continue with this next week, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. Okay, cool. We'll see you guys.
الله خير. وفقكم الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.